Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to finish off today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. If you have your own special selection that you'd like to submit, you can find a link to do so in the description box below. Today's comes at us from Peter. It says Paysage d'hiver, Schnee 1. So I actually had to do a little bit of looking into this. And paysage d'hiver is a French term that means landscape of winter. And that is interesting because the song title, Schnee, is a German term for snow. And I wanted to make sure that I got the pronunciations close, which is the only reason I went and found this out. But I think it's interesting that the band name is French, that the song name is German, and I think the band is Swedish, if I remember right. It was a really weird combination of countries. But anyways, let's dive into this and see what Paysage d'hiver has for us today. So we have this ambient wind. Kind of scared me a little bit. Oh, interesting. So there's actually like some leading elements in that fourth chord that actually resolve it down to the bar 1. I'll give it a second. We'll see where this is going. Certainly a lot of variety going on in the drum kit. We're hearing some melodic ideas kind of evolving in the guitar, but it's also really difficult to pick that out given the exceptional amount of static, overdrive, fuzz that's accompanying the guitars. Sounds like we're moving away from consonant tones to more dissonant ideas. It also just sounds like a bit of warping that goes on in the degradation of the audio as well, as far as the production goes. Really interesting to hear the variety of vocals in here as well. Has some really cool ideas going on in there. Yeah, really cool rhythmic idea there, and the drums juxtaposing what the guitar's got going on. The production's so interesting too. Like, some instruments are heavily degraded with tons of destruction, and others are clear as day. Like those toms, the toms are very crisp. They're slightly muddy, but as far as being able to hear them individually, they cut through everything else. Why the toms? We had a moment of 3 in there that seemed very short-lived. There seems to be a bit of human error in here as well. Now we're bringing back the beginning idea melodically with the thrasher element we've been evolving into. Interesting too, the drum patterns don't typically follow the rhythmic phrasing of the melodic instruments. Getting more and more static. Yeah, it is actually. Of course, that's not how it would have ended. It's really interesting to hear the contrast in production here with the synths having width to them. Everything else has been very centered. The staggered fade out is an interesting idea, though. Fading out the song, but keeping the guitar and the synths, and then fading out the synths. I mean, the guitar, but keeping the synths, and now fading out the synth and keeping the wind that we had at the beginning. I don't know if that wind's been there the whole time or not. But that's a pretty cool idea. The staggered fade out. I think. I mean, there's 20 more seconds. I'm pretty sure it's just the wind. Yeah, so, man, this this genre, this lo-fi black metal, just goes against everything. I think that as far as the genres you guys have introduced me to, I think the lo-fi black metal might be the hardest one for me to not only just get into, but also speak about. It goes against a lot of what I listen for in music, even more so than what's that other genre that's really given me a loop. I can't think. I think this is, oh, you know what, it was that Swans track, the something baby, uh with basically just sitting in a single idea for, I mean, basically what this did as well, sitting in a single idea for, a really long period of time. But at least in that Swans track, there were elements that I could pick up on because the production was cleaner. There were things that I could still speak about that I was hearing. And the thing with this lo-fi black metal stuff is that the production obscures the music. And either my ears just are not ready to listen to music that is veiled through production, or that's the point, is to hide the music under the production. And this isn't the only genre to do it. It's something that I've talked about in post metal before. But I don't know what it is about the lo-fi black metal idea that it feels like it goes right over my head. Like I'm listening to it, I'm like, okay, I can get why people get into this, but I mean, halfway into the song, 75% into the song, I'm like, I'm just not going to have a lot to talk about here. And, coming into this, I still don't think I do. It's a lot of doing a single thing but obscuring it, hiding it under the production so it's difficult to listen to find. And what it ends up doing is creating a vibe. And I think that's really what this style of music is great at. And that's not to say that it doesn't excel anywhere else. It does, for sure. There are some really interesting melodic ideas going on in here when I could pick up on them. But a lot of what I heard was we have this one idea, this one chord progression, we're going to use it over and over and over and over and over, and lots of static, lots of compression and distortion and fuzziness to create this static element. And I mean, that sums up a lot of my experience with this track. Now, it does create a very specific vibe. This is something I talked about when we looked at Agaloc's album, the album reaction a couple Saturdays back, is that, this specific vibe, it certainly takes me someplace, and a lot of what I mentioned with Agalock was black and white, right? Snow on a mountain kind of vibe. And I don't think that it's any coincidence that this does that as well. I had mentioned that the band name means something along the line, Landscape of Winter. The song name is Snow. I don't think that it's any coincidence that the song takes me to a very similar place as that Agalok album did. I think a big part of it too is black metal uses that compression, right? That that overdrive, that noise, the signal noise, the auditory destruction, that like a lot of it, and it buries the core timbres, the bass timbres under that sound. And to me, being a millennial, I associate that with static on the TV. When you would turn the TV to a channel where there was no signal coming in, and you would get, the signal noise, the black and white signal noise, and it sounds very similar. And we used to call it TV snow. I don't know if that was a regional thing or maybe it was that's what a lot of people called it. I don't know, but it was snow on the TV, right? And so the imagery of black and white, I'm going to probably have paired with this sound, this staticky noise, for probably all of my life. So when I listen to black metal, I typically think black and white, which makes me think of bleak outlooks, which typically brings me to snow, especially like an endless snow, something on a mountain, or just white for as long as you can see, no sun, whether it's covered by clouds or whatnot. Just very gloomy, bleak, snow-filled landscapes is what I think of when I listen to black metal, especially stuff that predominantly hides their instrumentation behind that noise. Here, I'd say that the static was actually its own instrument. I think whatever instrument it was added to completely overshadowed what it was doing. The chordal movement that we heard above that static was a completely different instrument that just happened to be a little louder than whatever instrument was being overdriven and distorted and compressed. And just having static as a core aspect of the soundscape puts me in these very bleak environments musically. That's where they always transport me to. And I wonder how often or how widespread this feeling is. Like I said, I don't think it's much of a coincidence that this song reminds me of other black metal tracks and happens to have snow in both its band name and its song name. Um, but it's interesting though too because a lot of black metal gives me despair, right? Despair or aggression with that bleakness. And this doesn't. Like I mentioned, right above that static noise is this other instrument. I don't know what it is. It might be the strings that we heard at the end, but it's something a bit up in the range and follows a chord progression, and there's some uplifting elements to it, right? There's not a lot of instability in it. There's not a lot of negativity in the emotions as the progression continues through the bars. It's, I think it's overall an optimistic chord progression. And we can even hear some of these ideas of optimism or brightness show up in the clean vocals as well. And I think I just want to take an aside here. I think it is very interesting that the synths and the clean vocals have so much power to them that they can get around the flatness in every other element of the production. The guitars that we have this static noise on, extremely flat. All the bass stuff, aside from the toms, extremely flat. It's just nothing has punch, nothing has oomph. It just kind of exists. It's there. It doesn't draw attention to itself. It's very easy to just kind of forget about almost all of these aspects individually. You can kind of let them blend into the background and focus on specific ideas. Nothing calls attention to themselves. And it allows every instrument to kind of just bleed into the background, except anything that carries melodic or harmonic weight. The chord progressions, the clean vocals, they are loud. The clean vocals specifically have a ton of reverb on them. And, I wonder how much of that is necessity, whether it's a physical necessity. Maybe the person is not a strong vocalist, right? And there's a lot of, maybe there's some pitch correction on it. And so they lo-fi the vocals, but now they don't sound very powerful. So they give them extra width and extra, presence so that they can have these nice notes that go along with the chord progression. Like harmony is very important to this song, so much more than a lot of the black metal that we've listened to, especially in lo-fi. There really is not much of an emphasis on the notes at all. It's mostly about the textures. So it's really interesting to see this extra weight put on notes and chords. But if not a requirement for a physical limitation, then a requirement to add this reverb for a production one. You've got to give the vocals that lo-fi vibe, but you still want them to have enough presence to call attention to themselves and also reverberate and not reverberate, resonate within what the chord progression is doing in the synths. So it needs to be lo-fi and gritty and crunchy, but clean and in the spotlight. And just how do you do that? And I guess this is not a bad example of that. So, like I said, I'm not really sure what led to the vocal production being the way it is, but it's intriguing. It's muddied, but it's clear. It's kind of lo-fi and well, I mean, I guess muddy and clear is the best way to put it because like you can hear the distinct notes, but you can't really hear the distinct syllables, right? And it tries real hard to bleed into the background, but it also has this reverberation to it that calls attention to itself because nothing else has that. Like I said, everything else is rather flat. Look at the toms, the snares, the bass kicks. They kind of just have this dull thud. You don't get that nice reverberation, that natural reverberation that comes off of these. You don't get the decay. You get the attack, and then that's kind of about it. And even the attack is lame. It lacks punch, right? And impact. It's more of just this duh, duh, duh. You don't get that thump, right? That is a strong bass kick. It calls attention to itself, it has a strong attack, and it has a nice decay. Thump. You get that airy after hit. This is more like a duh, duh, duh. Like you hear the attack, and that's kind of about it. And it's not even a nice chunky attack. It's kind of like a legato attack for percussion. It's kind of not even a real thing. But I mean, this might be the closest analogy to it. So much so that when we did get those double bass kick 16th notes, it kind of blended into a single note because there just wasn't a strong articulation on the attacks to designate each of these as individual notes, which is something I'm going to get into regarding everything in a bit. Man, where did I forgot. I did not mean to go into this tangent so far. Oh, yeah. So, the vocals and the synthesizer stuff is placed above everything in the mix, which I think is just, it's very interesting. Those two, along with the toms, have a ton of presence, right? Everything else is crunched down, forced to bleed into the background. Some of it is just outright covered up. Like I said, the guitar timbre might as well not even be there. It is pure static as far as my ears can tell. And then these other random elements are elevated. And like I said, for the synths and the vocals, the clean vocals, it adds the element of musicality, right? Consonance and harmony to and melody to this otherwise sonoristic texture-based music. But why the toms? Like, why are they so powerful? And it leads me to so many questions. Like even right there, I just made the observation the vocals are louder, but they have reverb, and it led me into this huge thing of just like talking my way through possible situations for it. But I still don't know what led to that. And I have those same questions with everything about the production. There are elements in here that are lo-fi. There are elements in here that are not. There's elements that are designed to fade away and be ignored, and others that call attention to themselves in ways that cling more to a cleaner production than what 90% of the rest of the song falls into. It's an interesting combination of almost conflicting production styles. And then we can also look at something like the growls, which I'm not even sure if they were growls because it was more of just like hearing a crackle now and then that seemed to have a syllable tied to it. And it's just so drowned out by everything that I'm honestly not sure what it was. And all of this kind of comes together to create a song that, like I said, I'm not too sure about. I think it may have went over my head. There was though that middle section, which I don't, like I said, I don't know. We went through, we had like 10 minutes of the same thing. Maybe like eight and a half because we have the intro wind. And let me just say, man, I don't have an issue with it being artistic expression, but as a song, as far as listenability goes, for me, completely subjective right here, this is just my opinion. The intro and outro winds are way too long. There was definitely a point where I'm like, okay, I get this. It's setting up a vibe. I'm here for it. It was already giving me like, climbing a snowy mountain vibes. Like I was already in there. The picture, the wind, the snow in the band and song name. Like I'm here already. And it took so long to get to the music. And the outro took so long to finish the song off. And I mean, I kind of feel bad for starting my analysis while the song was still going. I think there were 5 seconds left, but it's just the wind, and I get it. Like we've heard the wind before, so it's not a new idea. It really takes the listener just sort of understanding the context for it. And I suppose in a way it could be a sort of a winding down, right? A cool down session, the opposite of a warm up. But we already had a cooldown. That's what the staggered fade out was. So like the wind section really could have been cut down to 15, 20, 30 seconds tops and have had the same effect, at least for me. Again, there are some people who might have thought that it ended too short or really enjoyed the amount of time they had just to hear the wind and allow themselves to compartmentalize what they had heard musically in this section. But for me, it just, I didn't get it, right? I really felt like the same effect could have been had with a shorter amount of time with the intro and opening. But yeah, so we were in this section, so many tangents. We were in this section for like 8 minutes, right? Nothing's really changing. Our chord progression's identical. Maybe there's some transitions in from like verse, chorus, bridge or stuff. I don't know because honestly, it all kind of sounds the same, right? I already said I had a lot of trouble hearing past the noise. And a lot of what I heard was the noise and the synths doing that chord progression. Sometimes we'd get different vocals, but honestly, other than hearing, oh, we got clean vocals now, rather than that crackling that I think was probably growls, I don't really know that there was any difference there lyrically. I could not pick any specifics out. It was more about the overall vibes that I was getting. So, we've been in this one section for such a long time. And then it's just boom, 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 boom. We're doing, this section, a bit of a thrash section, and then we moved to that 3/4 section out of nowhere, which was like 18 beats long. So we're looking at 6 bars of 3/4, which is just what? That's just odd all over the place. Even if it was actually felt as 6 instead of 3, it's still 3 bars of 6, which is a little closer to something more standard, but it's still an odd number of bars. It's not something we typically phrase our music in. And it's the only time that we do this. Like a lot of our phrasing, at least to me, felt in 4 bar, well, something divisible by 4. I don't want to say it's specifically 4 bar phrases, but it's in that standard divisible by 4 area. And then we move into like some blast beats, double bass kick stuff, and then we go into something else, and it's just like section after section after section. And it's like, I hate to say this, but when it comes to music like this, I do reach a point where I become bored, right? And a lot of that is because I'm coming at this song, or every song actually, critically, right? I try to engage emotionally when I can, but Typically, that means turning off my analytical side, which means I'm not going to have as much to speak about the section on the analytical aspect. If there's something new going on in the guitar, I might not hear it as I'm taking the song in as a whole rather than specifically zoning in on a specific element. Um, so, I tried to engage emotionally sometimes and see if there's anything that I could vibe out with, just kind of, feel what's going on here. But that's not as easy for me to do with the camera in front of me and the lights in front of me and the microphone. Like, it's a completely different environment than my casual listening, where I'm usually a bit more relaxed, sitting down for one. I record all these standing up so that I can be more expressive, because I don't know why, I tend to be a bit more dull visually, physically when I'm sitting down. So, it's a very different environment than when I'm casually listening to music, and I find it's more difficult to switch into that emotional element. So I'm listening to this song, and like I said, I've kind of, I feel like I've figured everything out, and I'm just waiting for the next section to come, and it just doesn't. And I'm just waiting, and it doesn't. And I'm like, okay, we got some minor variation here, but we still have this chord progression that we've heard since the beginning. And the drums, the drums, I will say, had a lot of variety in that first 8 or 9 minutes. There might have been a pattern to it, but as far as I could tell, just every 16 bars or whatever, just changing it up a little bit, and I enjoyed that. It gave me something to latch onto and check out. But then just out of nowhere, I feel like the song's just going to keep doing this until it ends. And then it just rapid fire hits me with like 5 new ideas, and I barely have time to figure them out. And the first time I'm caught off guard, I'm like, oh, geez, this is a drastic change. What's going on here? And by the time I figure out what's going on, we're in a new one. And it's whiplash, right? Again, I don't want to use the term bored because I don't want to imply that the music is boring. But as for the way I was listening to it, I had reached a point of boredom and was whipped out of that with something so chaotic I could barely keep up with the changes until we resolved back into the idea that I had already figured out. And it's a strange way to go about writing this song on a musical level. And we just checked out a Pink Floyd song. And holy cow, this is another long video. If you didn't check that one out, it was like an hour and 12 minutes. We checked out a song called Echoes. And there's a link to it right here if you want to check that out. And I mentioned that it's a song that is designed to be felt, not analytically dove into. And that's not to say you can't analytically dive into it and break it apart and figure out what makes it tick, but that's not why they wrote it. As far as I could tell, a lot of the decisions were storytelling decisions, not necessarily in melodic storytelling, but sound storytelling. What does this sound mean? How does this sound make me feel? Do I think that this sound would make a listener feel the same way? And let's put these sounds, it's not about notes really for a lot of it, it's about sounds. And that's what this is. So coming at it analytically and saying that I was bored in parts of it, and that by the time I figured out what was going on in the middle and was ready for, that whiplash back and forth, constantly changing things, that I was thrust back into the part I had already figured out, is the wrong way to listen to that. And I want to make sure that I'm said that I'm clear on this, okay? So people don't walk away telling me that I listened to this wrong. I know I listened to it wrong, okay? I'm saying that right here. But it is just man, it left me with a negative taste there in the middle because of how thrown about I felt, which could also possibly be the way they wanted me to feel. Right? It could have been being in a snowstorm for an extended period of time, thinking I'm going to make it out alive, and a blizzard coming in and disrupting all my plans and tossing me around. And when the blizzard ends, I'm in a place that looks familiar, but is also not where I was. And maybe that's part of what the story was supposed to be. I don't know. But that's how I felt. And that's not to say that I'm never going to give Paysage de Ver another chance. I've mentioned many times before that I do not judge a band on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 songs. There's always going to be new stuff that could be different. Bands evolve all the time. But this song did leave me in a place that I wasn't too happy being in. And again, maybe that's the point. But it has a lot of interesting ideas to it. Production, musically, compositional, as is kind of the same thing, and structurally, that just kind of put me in not a great place. I didn't really enjoy a lot of my time here. And then, of course, the intro and outro, like I said, I felt was a bit too long. Give me a second. I'm going to dive into the lyrics here, and I'm going to see if I can't make heads or tails of any thematic cohesion between the lyrics and the music, and then we're going to wrap this guy up. And that would be a great plan if I could find any lyrics. So, I think we're going to call it quits here. And once again, I ask you guys to educate me. Let me know if you enjoyed this, what you get out of it. You know, what is its allure for you? Is it primarily just that atmosphere? I can totally see putting this on, chilling in a corner, especially on a cold winter night. All right, cracking the window a little bit, letting that cool air come inside, nip at my toes, and just dive into this music and let it surround me. But also, I don't know that I would be able to get past the production, right? The music, the atmosphere would definitely pull me in, but the production's just a bit too gritty for me. And that's not to say that I couldn't work with it, but I do think it would be a bit of a hurdle. And let me know if it is a hurdle for you, if you appreciate the style, if you're a black metal fan, but you just can't get into this specific kind of black metal. I'm curious about that as well. Or, if you have made that progress into lo-fi black metal, how? Is there a way I can do it? Or is it just one of those things where it's an acquired taste? You gotta put the time in and get used to it. I don't know. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. Above the comment section, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I'm going to do this a little backwards, I guess. All three of those are greatly appreciated. Below that, in the description box, is a link for Linktree, which will take you to this menu right here. You can pick up some merch, follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, support me through Patreon, which also allows you to vote on future themes and songs. Just a bunch of stuff. Go ahead and check it out. And that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. We'll continue with deep cuts and check out another special selection. Alright, until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.